So I just released a video all about what a long-term relationship looks like if you are with a dismissive avoidant who doesn't change, who doesn't heal, who they just stay and remain a dismissive avoidant for their whole life. And so in today's video, what I want to do is dive into what signs exist to show that a dismissive avoidant may in fact heal or be healing. And in this video, we're going to talk about the different ways people can heal, the different approaches to behavior that people may take on. And we will talk most importantly about how to decide if this is you in your healing journey, if you are a dismissive avoidant, or stay tuned for other videos for the different attachment styles so you can see if this is you as a different attachment style working to become secure. So we're going to talk about 6 major signs that a dismissive avoidant is healing. We're going to talk about these signs in order, but we are going to start first by just talking about what healing looks like. Does it look the same for every attachment style? And what are some ways that healing can still take place if you're not going to active therapy or counseling? So obviously, healing starts with the clear things, right? It can be somebody's in therapy, somebody's in counseling, somebody's meeting with a coach each week, somebody is doing something to be accountable and gain insight and get feedback and learn different tools. And that's pretty clear. If somebody's in those things, a whole bunch of green flags, right? They're making an effort, they're doing the work, they're gaining insight. And also it's a big green flag because somebody's obviously willing enough to be accountable for their own behavior that they're going to be somebody who probably long-term is growth-oriented in a relationship. Okay. So big green flag to start off with. Number 2, people are doing other things, right? Somebody's on a personal development journey. They're watching YouTube videos every day. They are reading books. They are taking online courses. There's maybe an independent feature to that, but maybe that's also because it's really specific to what they're going through. And they found something that really speaks to them and that's in alignment with them. And they're clear about what they're looking for, what tools work best for them. They're independently doing the work. And it's not, I want to be clear about this. It's not that they're just learning. It's that they're also plugging in, okay? So they're not just reading a book and going, okay, cool. They're reading a book and saying, this is me. This is what applies to my life. Okay, this book tells me this is the thing I have to do differently. And they're starting to apply tools so that they can express new forms of behavior, right? They're actually trying to show up and plug into new forms of behavior. And that can also be through courses. That can be taking courses and watching video lessons and going, oh my gosh, this is me. This is what I do. Here's why I do it. Okay, here's what I can do instead. Let me actively practice this. Okay, so these are big green flags, right? Huge green flags still. Everything's looking great. A lot of times, dismissive avoidants don't learn and do the work in that way. So here's another way that actually works. And I'm telling you this because, you have to be so careful and so specific if you're going to be vetting for this, but I'm telling you this because I have seen the impact of this. Okay. So a lot of dismissive avoidants, what they will do if they're not doing counseling or therapy or coaching, and they're not doing reading or meditation or courses or journaling, these active things from taking in insights and applying them to their life. A lot of dismissive avoidants do show up and do the work in the relationship. So I would see very frequently 2 schools of thought, and I'll tell you from 2 client stories. On one hand, I had a client, and again, these stories represent all the clients, okay? Many of these types of situations, it seemed to go down one of 2 paths. I would often have clients who came in alone and they were like, I want to do the work on my relationship, but my partner didn't want to be here. And so I want to work on my part of it, and I want to work on learning tools to help them show up differently. And so the first steps were like, you have to get your house in order first, right? Because if you're going to start saying, hey, I want you to change and do the work, it's always going to be easiest to make that argument if you're clearly doing the work, okay? If you're clearly communicating differently, if you're clearly showing up in a healthy way, you're clearly being accountable. So now it's really easy to pitch to somebody, hey, I'm showing up and I want you to meet me, right? Instead of saying, hey, you should do the work if you haven't necessarily shown that you are just yet, okay? So that's first. The second part to this is then you want to be able to have a conversation with a dismissive avoidant and say, look, here's what I'm learning. I've learned about attachment styles. This is what I think I am, and share about your attachment style, share the key points of the others, and don't say this is what you are, because dismissive avoidants will often take that as criticism. Say, which of these do you think you might be? And when you share that, often dismissive avoidants are logical enough to go, oh, I'm the dismissive avoidant one. And I have a video, by the way, about that too. That's like how to tell a dismissive avoidant about attachment styles. And some tips and tools and all that good stuff. And make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss things like this. But when you're going through this, okay, the next thing you're going to do is you're going to tell them the work you're doing and what you need from them specifically, and you're going to positively frame it. Positive framing is the difference between saying, you don't care about me, you never spend enough time with me, versus saying, I'm feeling disconnected. I would love for us to spend some quality time together. Let's do something fun this weekend. Positive framing means you're taking what you need and expressing it in the what you need form, not the what you're not doing blaming form. Okay. If you want to get heard by a dismissive avoidant, that will matter. That will be like the secret sauce. And so if you go to your dismissive avoidant loved one and you say, hey, I've been working on communication and boundaries, and I'm learning how to regulate my emotions better and learn my needs. I'd love if we can both work on this together. Can we practice communicating differently? Will you sometimes be more vulnerable with me? Will you share with me what's on your mind? If you're doing this, I will tell you, a lot of dismissive avoidance, if it's presented to them in a healthy way, when you communicate and convey that that's important to you, they will often show up with flying colors and plug into the work. And what I mean by this is they'll often show up and when you do say, okay, well, what do you need in this situation? Or, hey, I need a little bit more quality time together. Or, hey, can you be more present with me? When you're sharing these things, a lot of times if they're positively framed, you'll see the work happening from your loved one, because when you ask, they'll stop what they're doing and they'll be present, or they'll work on being present, or they'll reflect after a disagreement and say, actually, I do see my part and here's what I'll work to do next time. And so doing this can be a big way that dismissive avoidants heal. And I like to think of this as like you're leading by example. Okay. And I had a client who did exactly that, and we'll call her Rose. And she had a partner who was dismissive avoidant, and she plugged in. She was like regulating herself better so that she could communicate more effectively. She was taking things less personally. She was in a really great mood a lot of the time. She knew her needs. She started articulating her needs healthily, and her dismissive avoidant partner met them. And when she started having disagreements, if they ever came up, or if she felt like there was a disconnection, she would say, well, what do you need in this situation? I need this. What do you need? And she would sometimes make suggestions, and the dismissive avoidant she was with he learned how to communicate back. He learned how to say, well, I need this. I guess I need that. Actually, yeah, you're right. I think this is what I'm looking for. And over time, they grew securely attached together because he was plugging in that way. Okay. So that is a way. But oftentimes, and we're going to talk about signs in just a second that somebody's healing. But oftentimes dismissive avoidance will not, right? It can be a factor that, like, you ask them to do the work, they're not going to therapy or counseling or coaching or whatever. They're not taking courses or reading from books. They're not willing to show up in those conversations or disagreements. And so, yes, there can be times where like they are not hitting any of those key parts, and that can be frustrating, right? That can be disappointing. And that's where you have to decide, well, do I want to be with somebody in a relationship long-term like this? And that's where I have that video that I mentioned all about specifically what a relationship looks like long-term with an unhealed dismissive avoidant. And you have to decide if that's what you're willing to get into. So what are some actual signs that somebody's healing? Okay, so whether they're in any of those three camps that we just talked about, what are some signs? Number one, dismissive avoidants start to make compromises. You'll start to see them making better compromises. They're learning, okay, I have to plug in, I have to meet needs sometimes, I have to show up, and they're more accountable for that stuff. They will reflect after a disagreement or argument. Just these are easy places to start for dismissive avoidance, because they can be quite reflective if there's not chaos around something, if there's not anger and big frustration. The next big piece is you'll start to see them being more vulnerable, especially if they feel more accepted. The more somebody positively frames in communication, it makes it so much easier to communicate, to feel seen, to feel heard. And they'll start to be in a place where they can let their guard down, feel more accepted. And this is where you'll see them start to warm up. Okay, these are some big signs. They become a little more warm. They become a little more present. They open up a little bit more. You can feel their guard coming down. These are some big signs along the way. And then what you will start to see is when they start communicating about their needs, this is when you know, okay, we've really started to come full circle, where in a disagreement, they can say, well, hey, I'm feeling frustrated because I need this, or because this wasn't happening in this particular situation. And they can actually say what they're needing more of. And when that happens, it sounds funny because you think that, oh, dismissive avoidance, they need to learn to make compromises more. Yes, they do. That's definitely a cornerstone of their growth. But part of why it's so hard for them to make compromises is because they're not allowing themselves to share what they truly need from somebody else. And so they're often not feeling like their needs are met. And so they're having a hard time co-regulating, right? They're having a hard time feeling like they can soothe through others, which leaves them often feeling like I go into a relationship and it's one-sided. You're soothing through me, but I don't get to soothe through you. And then they're like, I need to keep an arm's length and not take on too much emotionally because relationships are draining. So when they start, communicating what they need, it actually opens up their bandwidth. They become better at co-regulating, like regulating with other people, not just on their own. And then they move into a position where you'll start to see, okay, these are where somebody's starting to become securely attached. They take criticism less intensely. They sort of work through some of the different wounds and fears they have there through a lot of exposure work by practicing showing up in a different way. They know their needs and they're communicating them. That really leads to a lot more emotional regulation. And when they start to actually make compromises and not be so intense with their boundaries and they start to speak up more communication wise, you'll see a lot of positive benefits to this. And last but not least, then you'll often see that dismissive avoidants end up in a situation where they don't need their creature comforts in the same way. They're not constantly numbing out or avoiding things. They can be more present in their own life, in their own body. Their nervous system's more regulated because they're co-regulating more effectively with other people. And that's when you're really looking at, okay, the dismissive avoidant person has become securely attached and they've come full circle. So if you want support with any of that, I do want to let you know we have a 7-day free trial right now. For every attachment style, you can go and you can take your attachment style healing program, but we're actually doing this for a limited time where you can spin to win and it gives you all these different like free offers and options. You can get a 7-day free trial plus free course for life. You can get a 14-day free trial to your program, which you can really sink your teeth into in 14 days because it's not super long and intensive, but it's the program to become securely attached for each style. And we even have a version where you get a free membership. So you can check out down below. Use that link. It's just available for a limited time for this month. And I hope you enjoy. And thank you so much for watching and for listening.